Hey everybody, it's Mike Sullivan with Born to Shine. Today we have an amazing guest, super unique, really cool. Her name is Dr. Kim Moore, and she is the superintendent over at Richland School District number 2 in
Yes.
in beautiful South Carolina. So Dr. Moore, thank you for carving out some time with us today.
Well, thank you, Mike. It is truly my pleasure.
Well, wonderful. Well, let's just dive in. I've read your bio. Amazing. So, what was your journey like? I can't wait to hear this. I can't wait for our listeners to hear this. What was your journey like to become a school superintendent?
Well, my journey is not the typical journey because I am not a traditionally educated teacher, meaning I didn't go to college to become a teacher and move up through the ranks of the educational system. I'm actually a retired military officer.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the privilege to serve my country for 20 years
Mm.
as a chemical corps officer. So whenever I say that, people always want to know, well, what does a chemical corps officer do? And we are the people that deal with chemical, nuclear, and biological warfare, weapons of mass destruction. And so my career in the military, because of my particular specialty, took me to a variety of locations and jobs, of course, through that time. But one of my favorite positions was when I was a basic training company commander at Fort McClellan, Alabama, which was the home of the Chemical Corps. What I loved about that training or being the commander was that I got to take civilians, so high school graduates who wanted to join the military, and in 8 weeks, take them from being a civilian and transform them into soldiers.
Whoa.
And that's basic training. Now, I know you're wondering, well, why is that relevant to what I'm doing today? And that's because in the military, we say training. In the civilian world, it's education, it's teaching. So we taught
Mm.
civilians how to become soldiers. We taught them how to wear their uniform, how to properly fire their weapon, how to properly put on their protective gear and their protective mask, their gas mask. We taught them the basics of being a soldier.
Mm.
And so when I retired, my last assignment was at the Pentagon, where I served on the Secretary of Defense's staff. That was my last position as a part of the team that negotiated the Convention Against Chemical Weapons. Um, and so I retired, and then the question became, what are you going to do next? Because I was fairly young in age, um, and it was a question of what my next career move would be. And so a friend of mine who was also a chemical officer who had retired, and we had known each other since we were lieutenants, had become a teacher. And he said, Kim, you always talk about the best jobs you had were when you were a basic training commander, when you were writing field manuals, which is curriculum for the military, when
Mm.
you were a platform instructor at the schoolhouse at Fort McClellan. Those are all teaching positions. You should become a teacher. And I thought about it, and I'm a woman of faith, so I prayed about it. And I said, okay, I'll try. I went to an interview and I got hired to teach science, which is my degree, biology with a minor in chemistry. And I got hired to teach um, science, and that began my educational career. So, in my educational career, I've been a teacher, I've been a district resource teacher, a supervisor, an assistant principal for student affairs, an assistant principal for magnet curriculum, a high school principal, a director for a director of administration, an assistant superintendent for career and innovative programs, and now I am the superintendent of Richland 2 School District, which is located in Columbia, South Carolina. And so I say all of that because my journey has not been traditional,
Mm.
but I would say to people, if you have a passion to teach, no matter where you started from, you can still fulfill that dream, that opportunity, that gift. in my case, I believe God blessed me to have and directed my path.
I absolutely love that. It's so unique, Dr. Moore, because as you said in the beginning, it wasn't the typical path, right? Starting off as a teacher, then a principal, then an assistant soup, director of curriculum, superintendent. It was military, then the Pentagon, and you're training or teaching. So it was really that's a really beautiful journey, and it's interesting how your friend even noticed that, right, and shared that with you and prayed about it, and here you are, superintendent now. And I love that. And when you were a kiddo, when you were K-12, was there anything that you may have struggled with your mental health? Like for me, it was in third grade, being bullied and having anxiety and depression, and I was really struggling internally, which made it hard to reach my academic goals because there was a constant internal wrestling match going on. Was there anything that you may have struggled with?
Well, I don't. Yes, of course, as as a student, as a K-12 young person, I think we all struggle sometimes with different things. Maybe for me, it could have been around um, not per se my identity, but my role, um, and the pressures of the role that I had assumed. My parents divorced when I was in what we would consider today middle school, and at that time, divorce was not very popular. It
Mm,
was not something that people did, and the impact of that was it significantly changed the um, quality of our life because we moved out of my mother and my two sisters and I. We moved out of our house. We moved into a an apartment, a two-bedroom apartment, which meant my room was the dining room, and so my younger sisters had one bedroom. My mother had the other bedroom. And my mother at that time did not have her high school diploma because back then you didn't have to get your high school diploma. Women got married and started raising their families. So
mm,
she went back to school. She earned her high school diploma. She went then to college and became an LPN. Then she became an RN, and then she became a nurse anesthetist, which is great. But what that meant was I, as the oldest, stepped in to take on a lot of the responsibilities.
mm,
So I learned to balance the checkbook at 12.
mm,
And I knew, and I paid the bills. So I knew when the money was running low. I
mm,
knew that at the end of the month, we didn't have enough money for food. And
mm,
that created like some anxiety. So I know food insecurity. But we were very blessed that my grandfather somehow always knew and would show up with a bag of groceries to provide for us. But it it doesn't take away that sense of anxiety for a young person, and I see so many of our students today having to step into adult roles when they're at such a younger age. And what that does is it will manifest itself in different ways. So some students may have anxieties about, and they're worried, and they're constantly in a state of fear because they don't know what's going to happen. Some may become over controlling, right? I need everything in order. I got to make sure everything is done right. And so for me, I think it really came down to my need to just make sure I get things done and get things done, get it done and get it right and just, um, execute. And so over the years, I've learned that it doesn't always have to be my way. It can be other people's way. But I think I carry some of those things unconsciously with me. And because back then people didn't really talk about mental health, we didn't talk about problems that people had. It's just we just deal with it, or we, just sweep it under the rug, or we don't that person goes off to the side and we just leave them over there. Today, we don't do that. We acknowledge, we check in with our students to see where are they at. How is your day going? And so I think in today's society, we are much more sensitive to the needs of our students and our children.
Well, that's a destigmatizing mental health is step one, right? Just to have a conversation, open up.
Mhm.
How you feeling? You know, it's okay to not feel okay. And then here's someone that can help. Here's some tools. Let's get you with the right
Right.
coach.
And so that you're absolutely right. So when I think back to my situation, if my having my grandfather show up with the groceries, and
Mm-hmm.
I was blessed to have a wonderful grandfather and to spend a lot of time with him. But for him to be able, if he could have just sat down and said, I think I'm sensing that you're anxious about something. Let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
We just didn't talk about it. And it's not that um, he didn't do something he was supposed to do, right? Or that my mother didn't do what she needed to do. It's just not what we did back then.
Right.
And so, you know,
Well, I'm so appreciative of you sharing that. And if anyone out there is listening, and you may be struggling with anxiety or depression or whatever it is, if you're just not feeling right, number one, it's totally okay. And number two, try and find an adult that you trust, right? That you know isn't judgmental and not going to say, well, that's just weird. Just someone that you know is a cool person, smart, that you trust, and just open up. That's step number one. And it's okay. There's no shame at all. Everyone has a coach. Every professional
yes,
athlete has a coach. Everyone that excels in anything, people that own the largest, most successful companies in the world, they all have coaches. They all have a team, right? Even schools, we have a team. So,
yes, we do.
and you know what? As a team, what are you noticing that's working really well, Dr. Moore, within your district? I think you have, you know, 20 elementary schools, you have a number of middle schools and high schools. It's a, you know, pretty large school district. What do you notice that's working well to support your students with their mental health? And then what are some things just to dream that you'd like to see more of next year?
So you're right. We have 40 schools and centers in my district, about almost 29,000 students. And one of the things that I think is going well is just the heightened sense of concern, right? It starts with the teacher in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
knowing their students. So that if Kim is coming in today and she's not her normal self, I need to check in with her. It's teaching kids to check in with themselves and and in a lot of our schools, we have places in the classroom. We have a space where kids can go to help them calm their self down or to spend some quiet time to regulate themselves. And so we've just incorporated mental health into our daily way of work. We have in our schools teams that when a student needs more assistance, then we have a team that can support them and support their family. One of the things that I found very beneficial in our district is we do family counseling. And so when students are at a certain point, maybe because of their behavior, as a part of their um, as a part of their process, because we want to change behavior, right? We recognize it's not just the student, we have to work with the family structure sometimes. And so we do have that. And then we recently entered into a contract with an organization called Care Solace to help our families be able to connect with outside providers in a very timely manner. Because what we found was parents would be, they'd meet with the school. We would give them the support that we could give them with our psychologists and social workers and mental health counselors. But then they need more help. And, they're trying to connect with a provider and it's taking 2 and 3 weeks. And then you find out they don't accept your insurance. And
Mm-hmm.
this parent is already is frustrated because they're trying to do what's best for their child who needs the help, but they're getting the runaround.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Not because anybody wants to do that, just the way the system works. So by working with Care Solace, they will help connect the parent with a provider because they look at your insurance, they look at what you're needing. We can do a warm handoff, or they can just call on their own if it's a weekend and their child is in crisis, and get them connected. It gets them connected with a provider in a timely manner. And so when you say, what is it that we would need more of? We need more mental health services. Um, we just need more services, not necessarily in our schools, although we do have vacancies and would love to hire more people, but more services outside of schools also, for families that need more intensive support. There's just not enough of people available. And then for insurance companies to provide adequate coverage, not say it's 3 sessions or 6 sessions, because
Yeah,
that may not be sufficient
right.
to address the needs of the student as well as the needs of the family. So that's what I would say. We would love to have more counselors or more, more supports within our school, but also more support for families outside of schools.
I love it. Yeah, it's beautiful because not only are you addressing the student, but the family as well, and including them, and that's the nucleus of their development. You know, their home. So it's among modeling. There's a lot of modeling happening, right? From mom and dad watching how they interact, how they treat each other, through our
Yes.
siblings, all this modeling that's occurring, and without the correct tools, it may be modeling something that's very harmful to them. So having a good healthy model, a good coach, yeah, and then just I think it's great. So you're helping them at school, but also addressing, supporting the family as well.
Right, because for example, we have, and across the nation, we're seeing attendance issues with our
Mm-hmm.
students.
Mm-hmm.
And so, why? So you have to look at what is the cause behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's an elementary student, they don't bring themselves to school. So what's going on in the dynamics of the family? Maybe the parent is struggling and they have they're depressed. They can't get out of the bed. Well, if they can't get out of the bed to make sure the child gets to school, that's not the child having the mental health issue. It's the parent having an issue, but it's directly impacting the quality of education the child is receiving. And so that's why it's important to have support within the school, but also support outside to help the family structure understand what's going on and help them get the resources that they need.
Absolutely. And if there are any parting words or final thoughts you have, or something that's on your heart that you'd like to share with our listeners, what would that be, Dr. Moore?
Well, I would say one of the things is I know we've talked a lot about the students and the families, but I would also say our employees
Mm-hmm. Staff.
struggle.
Right.
Our
Absolutely.
staff
Mm-hmm.
struggle. And so, how do we provide better support to our staff members
Mm-hmm.
as well as to our students? And that is something that we're working on. Staff can use Care Solace also. Um, we don't have as many resources for staff, but we do have resources for staff. But I would like people to make sure that they understand just because someone is an adult, that doesn't mean that they have addressed those issues that they've had from their childhood or even current life situations. And so, as a high school principal, I remember one faculty meeting. I showed a video. It was titled "What If." So, what if we knew? And it just gave some different scenarios. And one of them was one of the secretaries' husband had gotten into a severe accident. So what if we knew that? Would we treat her differently with extending her more grace,
Mm-hmm.
a little more compassion?
Mm-hmm.
What if we knew that this student's last meal was at lunchtime when they ate at school? So they haven't eaten since then. What if we knew that this person's family member was arrested last night? We don't know these things. So we should always be sensitive to how people are feeling and how people are behaving. And so I would just encourage people to, we spend a lot of time focused on our students, and that is where our focus should be. But we should also remember the adults who are responsible for taking care of the students. So that would be the first thing. And the second thing I would offer to parents and to everyone is to not sweep things under the rug, but engage and problem solve. And so if we do that, I think we can address things early, and then we don't end up with problems that have larger repercussions later.
100%. Prevention is the key, a conversation.
Yes.
It's okay. It's okay. We're here for you. What's going on? What's happening inside? And then to destigmatize any mental health support, and then just having the tools, the empathy. I think you mentioned compassion, extending grace. What if we knew what someone else is going through, right? And we
Right.
don't. It's just like mental illness. It's invisible. It's really hard to see, even to a trained eye. So I love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Moore. I appreciate your heart. I can feel it for your kids and for your district and for your staff and the families. I mean, you're truly a mama bear. You're a proud mama bear taking care of your cubs. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I believe someone asked me this week, in fact, why would I move from Florida to South Carolina to be a superintendent in today's challenging environment?
Hmm.
And I said, because this is where God called me to be.
Amen.
It's very simple for me as a person of faith. This is where
Amen.
He wanted me to be. And that's why I'm here.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing your time with us, Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. And thank you for what you're doing to bring awareness to this very, very important topic.
Same. It's what God told me to do. Same thing as a believer, and just it's my divine purpose. So I appreciate that. Thank you.